The original High on Life stood out by doing something most shooters would never try. It wanted to be genuinely funny. For some players that worked, for others the jokes felt like they were doing a lot of the heavy lifting for a game that was not especially strong underneath. That split never really went away. So when a sequel was announced, the concerns was not about writing. Squanch games can write jokes. The real question was simpler and harder. Has the game itself actually evolved? What's striking about the early coverage of High on Life 2 is not hype or excitement, but consistency. Across critics, skeptics, and people who bounced hard off the first game, the same idea keeps coming up. The sequel feels different in ways that matter. This is not a verdict, it's not a recommendation. It's just an understanding of what High on Life is now, where it has clearly improved and the risks it's still very deliberately taking. High on Life 2 is a direct continuation. It does not reboot itself and it does not reintroduce its tone. It assumes you already understand its humor, its interruptions, and its comfort with letting jokes run long. Narratively, the sequel widens its satire. The first game focused on humans as illegal contraband in a galactic underworld. This time, the target is institutional absurdity. Humans are being processed by a pharmaceutical megacorporation with politicians and executives positioned as the new villains. The fantasy shifts from being a cool bounty hunter to being an outlaw who happens to be right while nobody believes you. Structurally, the game is built around dense hub spaces framed as conventions, collectively known as Con-Con, Parking Con, Murder Con, Polycon. Each functions as a compact zone packed with combat, side interactions, and mechanical gates. Progression follows a light Metrovania logic. Weapons and tools unlock traversal options and open previously unreachable areas. They are not just guns, they are in some ways also keys. Importantly, this remains a finite authored experience. There is no live service framing and no attempt to stretch content endlessly. The ambition comes from density, from constant throwing ideas at the player and trusting momentum to carry the experience forward. It's unapologetically its own thing, and I love it for it. The most important change in High on Life 2 has nothing to do with its comedy. It's its movement. The skateboard replaces sprinting entirely and becomes your default state of motion. You grind rails, wall ride, chain momentum, and even throw the board as a melee attack. It's not a situational tool, it's always available, and the levels are clearly built around it. Early areas feel like skate parks in disguise, with ramps, handrails, quarter-pipe geometry, and grindable surfaces, all baked directly into combat spaces. The result is a dramatic improvement in pacing. One of the biggest criticisms of the first game was its stop-start rhythm. Combat interrupted movement, and movement rarely felt expressive. High on Life 2 flips that. Speed becomes part of the game's identity. What really sells this is how traversal systems overlap. The skateboard, knifey grapple, and weapon abilities share contextual logic. Miss a grind and knifey snaps you onto it. Chain momentum into a grapple and the flow continues. Combat no longer asks you to stop moving. Instead, it rewards you for staying in motion. Across early coverage, critics describe the same feeling. Once the board clicks, the game feels smoother, faster, and more confident, creating a foundation for the gameplay that simply didn't exist before. There is one point of near universal agreement. High on Life 2 plays much better. Gunplay, which many critics described as flat in the original, has been tightened. Weapons hit harder, encounters are easier to read, and combat spaces are designed to support movement instead of shutting it down. The talking guns remain the definitive feature, but they now feel mechanically necessary. Each fills a clearer role, not just in damage but in traversal, crowd control, and puzzle solving. Alternate fire modes and cooldown abilities add texture without overwhelming the player. This stronger foundation changes how the comedy lands. with several critics, including those who disliked the first game, note that the humor works better now, not because it is toned down, but because it no longer feels like a distraction. When the shooting itself is fun, the jokes feel additive. Boss encounters also stood out. They lean into spectacle and mechanical playfulness rather than raw difficulty. Whether these be traditional arena fights or something far stranger, they are all designed to surprise without overstaying their welcome. Most telling is the response from skeptics. Writers who bounced off the first game due to dull gameplay are now expressing genuine interest. And that's clearly not because the sequel abandons its identity, but because it finally supports that identity with solid mechanics. Where High on Life 2 feels more confident mechanically, it's also quite a bit more aggressive creatively. The game repeatedly breaks traditional structures. Menus become play spaces. UI elements are hijacked during boss fights. Setting screens turn into battlegrounds. Progression is interrupted by fully playable retro games included purely because the developers thought it would be funny. This is escalation and pure design philosophy. These moments are bold and memorable, but they are also disruptive by design. They break pacing, fracture impression, and assume the player is willing to go along with constant tonal shifts. Early coverage generally describes these as hilarious, but novelty is clearly doing a lot of the work. And what's making all of this work so far is timing. The game establishes mechanical confidence first, then earns the right to get weird. Whether that balance holds over an entire campaign remains unclear. High on Life 2 is willing to hijack itself for a joke. That audacity is central to its appeal, and it's also its biggest risk. Despite the positive tone overall, there are also a couple of cautionary tales. Platforming and wayfinding remain consistently criticized. While the skateboard improves speed and flow, transitioning between surfaces can feel imprecise. Navigating often relies on hidden systems, and some critics report moments where the intended path was unclear. This was a weakness of the original, and it does not appear to be fully resolved. The humor is also still polarizing. The cadence, improvisational delivery, and sheer density of jokes are largely unchanged. While better integrated, the comedy is still constant. If you found the first game exhausting, the sequel is unlikely to change your mind. Narrative cohesion is another split. The story exists and its themes are clearer, but the structure remains a question mark. With set pieces and detours frequently interrupting momentum, some players, that chaos is the point, and for others, it will undermine emotional investment. These potential issues do not negate its improvements, but they may define the boundaries of the experience. High on Life 2 is very clear about its audience. If you love the original, this is a more confident version of that experience. More movement, better pacing, and stronger mechanics, without standing down the edges. If you like the humor but bounced off due to weak gameplay, the sequel appears to be designed to win you back. It will also suit players who enjoy authored chaos over systematic depth. This is not a sandbox shooter, and it's not interested in restraint. It thrives on interruption, density, and surprise. What it is not for are players seeking quiet immersion, tonal consistency, or a game that gets you out of your way. High on Life 2 wants your attention constantly, and it assumes that you are willing to give exactly that. Altogether then, the early coverage paints a coherent picture of High on Life 2. The gameplay is stronger, movement finally has purpose, combat supports the comedy instead of compensating for it, and even long-standing skeptics are acknowledging that something meaningful has changed. The remaining question is endurance. High on Life 2 is dense, loud, and relentlessly inventive. That energy is exhilarating in curated slices. But whether it can sustain that escalation across an entire gameplay campaign without exhausting itself is still unknown. Right now, High on Life 2 looks like a sequel that understands its shortcomings, doubles down on its identity, and finally builds a game sturdy enough to support that. Whether it holds up until the credits is the only question that remains. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, leave me a comment down below, and until the next one, stay nerdy.